Hey, what's up? It's Joe. Welcome to Freestyle Fridays for February 7th. So, what have you been up to lately? Well, this morning I'm gonna sound like such a tech bro, but I went to the climbing gym to Boulder and then do some jujitsu. So that's something I've been getting back into lately. Jujitsu, that is, climbing. I probably do that, what, 3, 4 days a week, something like that. But I started jujitsu. What was it? 2004, I think. So this is way back in the day. And yeah, I did that. Kind of had a big detour into Muay Thai and MMA, but yeah, recently got back into Brazilian Jiu Jitsu again. So it's been a lot of fun, very humbling. I feel like the sport's changed a lot, um, and yeah, this will make sense in a bit and tie back to what I'm about to talk about. But um, when I got into jiu-jitsu way back in the day, there was it was Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, which was from the Gracie family from Brazil, and there's a lot of orthodoxy there, a lot of customs like um, everyone lining up and bowing in, and bowing to the picture of Haleo Gracie on the wall, and a lot of customs, right? And this is very common in a lot of martial arts. So I think Gracie Jiu Jitsu took a lot of its customs from other martial arts. So there's a lot of formalities and so forth. But then I fast forward to today, and the sport is very, very different, right? So I feel like a beginner again. I actually tried to start over as a beginner, but it wouldn't let me. So, but what's happened since then is just practices have changed. The sports changed. It's there's competition jiu-jitsu, which there were comps back in the day, but not what they are now. And so yeah, and you're seeing it's the evolution of the sport, right? And what the hell does this have to do with data and AI? Well, I think in much the same way, we have a lot of customs, we have a lot of traditions, and we have a lot of conventions, right? Martial arts has that. If you look at boxing, for example, right? There's very conventional ways of boxing, and then there's very unconventional ways of boxing. And in much the same way, we're in that with tech and data and AI right now. And so, as I'm writing my book, Mixed Model Arts, about data modeling, one thing that I've been really thinking about, especially on this latest chapter on what I call alt relational modeling, or alternatives to the relational model, is exactly what I've been experiencing getting back into jiu-jitsu, which is you learn a lot of the conventional ways of doing things, right? The old established ways of doing, maybe say an armbar or a chokehold or something like that. But then there's plenty of new ways to do things, right? But I think if having the basis of knowing the convention, knowing the orthodoxy, is a good starting point, and from there you can move on. And why is convention and why is orthodoxy important? Because presumably it works. Presumably people have invested a lot of years, a lot of cycles into something that can be taught, can be repackaged, taught all over the world in a very standardized way. So if we look at things like back to data modeling, the relational model, or even the dimensional modeling that Kimball innovated for analytical data modeling, these are tried and true techniques. These are techniques that have been around for many decades, very well established and very well proven in a variety of industries and a variety of practices and so forth. But all too often, what I see are, newer data teams, especially, glossing over or ignoring the conventions and the orthodoxy, and jumping straight into, kind of more new school, quote unquote, practices. Maybe not necessarily a bad thing, but at the same time, I feel like if you don't understand convention, if you don't understand orthodoxy, you don't understand the rules you're actually breaking. And there are definitely rules that you break, right? Just like in jiu-jitsu or boxing, there's certain ways of boxing, setting your feet, and throwing a punch, through your hips and so forth. These are all basics, right? If you think you have a different opinion on how to effectively maybe throw a punch, for example, I'd love to see it, but people have been throwing punches for thousands of years. The science is pretty well established in the correct way of doing things. But once you understand the proper technique, and then using your hips, by the way, a lot of your power, when you punch, it's generally through your feet and through your hips, not through your arms. Don't if you're trying to throw a punch with your arms, please don't do that. Make sure you're using your body, uh, and good mechanics. And that's much the same way when you're modeling data, for example, right? You have there are certain techniques like the relational model, right? Well established. The reason for it is the reason you'd want to use it is you want to minimize redundancies and side effects of update and delete anomalies and so forth. Why do you want to eliminate redundancies? Because it makes your data far easier to work with, to reason about, to understand, and also it means that you have a really good chance, if you're working with other people, that you have a shared vocabulary and a shared understanding of what you're doing, right? When you say the word normalization in the context of relational modeling, people will understand what you mean. And when you say things like first normal form, third normal form, or even Boyce-Codd and sixth normal form and so forth, they're all rule books in terms of how that works, right? Or if you use dimensional modeling, right? Facts and dimensions, in conformed measure and so forth. Like these are all sort of there's a vocabulary, there's a shared understanding of techniques, right? And there's sort of the tension that I want to get to, where there's a tension between orthodoxy and convention and speed and performance. And again, this is being highlighted in this chapter that I'm writing right now on alternatives to the relational model, where there are situations where you're going to outgrow the relational model, right? You're going to outgrow maybe even the dimensional model. And then what do you do from there? But I don't suggest just starting with something that's unconventional. I do suggest 99% of data teams out there start with convention. Understand the rules, understand the way things, quote, work. From there, you have a good understanding of your data. You have a shared vocabulary of the conventional ways of working. And then you also have a shared vocabulary of the rules you're about to break. But I'll give you an example. Back in the day in software engineering, software development, whatever, there was the mean stack, right? So Mongo, Express, Angular, Node, I think was stood for, and that was, Mongo was the database of du jour way back in the day, 15 plus years ago, and you could just throw all your data into it. And it's not a knock against Mongo, but the thing is, and even Mongo has documentation on how to model data for Mongo, but what you'd see are these people just throwing every conceivable form or piece of data into Mongo, and that's great until that's great when you're small. I think there's some validity to working with such a type of system when you're starting out, because you don't know your schema just yet. But what it means also is it sort of absconds you from thinking about your data and modeling it in a way that makes sense to the business and to the users, which is ultimately who your model should serve, not your laziness, right? But the notion is move fast, break things, and it's certainly a good way of breaking things, because all too often what I'd see is people throw a bunch of data into Mongo, for example, and again, not a knock on Mongo, but just the use of it or the misuse thereof. And then there's a steaming pile of data that needs to be resolved at some point, right? And typically this means refactoring either your Mongo database so it works more effectively and queries more effectively as your data scales, or moving it into a relational model, which, oh man, that's gonna be a lot of fun for you to do. It's mapping that the BSON, that binary JSON instance into tables, but that's pretty common, right? The developers get stuck in the mud and have to pull themselves out, and that's one example. On the analytical front, the du jour right now is just throw it all into one big table because, quote, joins are bad. Joins are bad when you have a problem with scaling. Most people don't have a problem with scaling. Most people would be very well to use to read Ralph Kimball's Data Warehouse Toolkit and just go with that. Model your data in facts and dimensions, because it's a very simple way of modeling your data. It's very understandable, and the conventions have been there since 1996. It'll work for like the vast majority of analytical use cases. And again, when you're on a data team, now when you say fact, right? A fact table, that's a table full of numbers, right? And that's a table that represents a certain grain of something, and it has a certain resolution of what it is you're trying to describe with your facts and then the related dimensions, right? Or if you're using Data Vault, right? Another fantastic modeling and architecture, but it's a framework, right? When you say hubs, links, and so forth, these are all conventions, and when you say that to your team, they understand what you're saying. So the other notion of speed and performance is the ability to move fast because there's no cognitive dissonance. You understand each other. You understand the model you're working with. I've seen more cognitive dissonance and problems resulting from working with things like one big table or working with just a bunch of tables or query-driven development where it's just everything is ad hoc and you can't keep track of everything. There's just everything is scattered, right? And so again, in the battle between orthodoxy and convention versus speed and performance, my recommendation is start with what works. Start with convention. Understand the rules. And only once you understand the rules do you have a basis upon which to break the rules. But don't think you're smarter than the decades of, countless, millions of people who have implemented these techniques and, to great success, right? And if the technique has failed, I would more look at your understanding and implementation of the technique before I would say that you need to find a technology or a system substitute for things, right? But it is what it is. If you find that point, there are certainly ways to model data, in the quote alt relational way, and that's what I'm currently writing about. I'm going to have some things over the weekend to publish on some drafts on Substack and so forth. So anyway, that's the rant for today. But it got me, something I've been thinking a lot about as I've been writing and as I was doing just jiu-jitsu today. We're going over my friend. Thankfully, it's interesting. Is my a really good friend of mine. I remember his first day of class many years ago, and now he's a black belt, so he's actually teaching me some things. And so we're going over basically if you're in jits, like kind of just head positioning, from the back, so you're going for a chokehold or something like that, and just how do you position your head correctly and how do you escape, doing a different type of head position. So it's interesting. There's a lot of subtlety. I think jiu-jitsu is one of those things I think is the closest thing I've ever seen to human chess, where there's so many factors at play and so many setups and strategies you can do. It's awesome. Wrestling, I think it's pretty close. I'm a pretty crap wrestler. Than boxing and Muay Thai as well, right? But I think the martial arts really do have a lot of analogies to chess. People think it's just go out there and just beat the shit out of each other, but there's a lot more to it. And so I'm glad to be back into it, right? And climbing, I feel the same way. I've been climbing for 30 plus years now. And it's cool seeing the sport evolve. Yesterday I was actually climbing on some of the more new school type of boulder problems, so a lot of comp type stuff, which is absolutely foreign to me. But I'm pushing myself in new directions, making myself uncomfortable, because I feel like that's how you grow. If you keep doing the same things over and over, then you're gonna be the same person, right? But I feel like I'll be 48 years old next month, so still got a lot to learn, right? And I still, thankfully I have really good genes and whatnot, so I can do these things as I did as a young person. I don't seem to be suffering too much. I think that's pretty cool. Just learning the new tricks so I can keep up with my kids and whatnot. But anyway, yeah. So that it means, but it also means I know what the convention is, and I know what new looks like, and the difference between the two. So in climbing, I definitely understand the proper techniques. I've been climbing at a very high level for many years. Jiu-jitsu is similar, but in anything you do in life, right? Everything evolves. And so you just got to learn how to morph. And so I think with this book, mixed model arts, one of the notions is, the danger is jumping into the new school stuff too quickly without understanding convention. I think alternatively, the danger is sticking with convention stubbornly and not realizing that there are probably other techniques you can apply to your convention that might make things work better, right? So it's just a matter of knowing everything out there and really applying it to your situation. Because again, every situation is different. Everything is context dependent. No jiu-jitsu match is the same, for instance. No climb is the same, right? They're all different. The closest analogy I could think of things that are the same is probably when you're running, track, just a standard, 400 meter track or whatever. Like that's pretty standard around the world, right? But most things are different, right? Most things require you to evolve. And so I think as much as, I'm going to tell you to learn convention, for people who know convention, conventional data modeling, for example, or conventional software engineering techniques, like learn the new stuff too. Don't be so stubborn to think that these are the only techniques that you need to know. The world is changing very, very quickly. And so, keep up, right? But at the same time, don't just jump straight into the new stuff without understanding why you're going to do it. And at the end of the day, it's about knowing the trade-offs for your situation, right? And for your situation are the 3 words that are super important to know. So anyway, yeah, I'll just be heads down writing. I'm going to be actually working on a workshop for data engineering. So if your company is interested in having, a data engineering workshop, where I can teach you the fundamentals of data engineering and many more advanced techniques in an in-person setting, happy to chat about that. We'll be rolling those out this spring. I'm going to be doing a lot more on YouTube pretty soon, so stay tuned for that. I've got some courses I'm working on. Got a bunch of stuff going on. Got a publishing company, which is sort of lightly announced. And yeah, my book will be the first one on that, but there are several others in progress right now from some very talented authors. So maybe I'll explain more about what that's about at some point soon. And what else? Oh, by the way, there's an awesome Discord channel, the Practical Data Discord channel. So there we're having some amazing conversations. Shout out to George Fraser, the CEO of Fivetran. He showed up yesterday and educated the some people on the pricing changes at Fivetran, which I think were throwing a few people off, and they were complaining about it. So I just said, well, can we get somebody from Fivetran to show up and maybe just help calm some nerves a bit? And George showed up. I thought that was super awesome. So thanks, George. It's really cool when somebody like that can take time out of their, which I'm guessing is a very busy schedule, to just come chat with the community. So we have a lot of live events. If you feel like showing up to those, it's great. We're going to be doing more book clubs, lunch and learns, guest speakers, and so forth. So really excited about this community. I've had, few people telling me this is definitely the most legit online data community that they've seen so far. It's just, no bullshit, just a lot of great conversations, practitioners, leaders, and so forth from a variety of like industries. I'm talking like hitters. There's a lot of really just top-notch people in this group. So if you haven't seen it, just go to my newsletter. I'll have a link in it for the Practical Data Discord. Anyway, I've been ranting a lot. One final thing too. What was it? Next week I'm doing a Coffee with Coalesce show. I think it's 13th, something like that, on LinkedIn Live. And then on the 20th, I'll be in San Francisco for Data Dates. That's with it's a Fivetran Snowflake ThoughtSpot Monte Carlo. We're doing an awesome event there. It's just a great data networking event week after Valentine's. So show up to that if you can. It'd be great to see you in San Francisco. Got a lot of stuff coming up after that. Winter Data Conference in Austria and so forth. So, and much more. So anyway, hope you have a great weekend. If you like this podcast, please like and give a review on the podcast platform of your choice. It really means a lot to me. And take care. Thanks for supporting the show, and have a great weekend. Bye.